With the MVP of my current Asteroids-like game in XRVR, I decided it was time to get another devlog going. I'll be covering what I've been doing, what I've been working on, and general thoughts on the processes there, and what I've found very useful, so hopefully some of you might find some benefit to that as well. So for the past couple of months, I've been working on two projects. One is the Asteroids Like that I've been working on for maybe 2.5 months. And another one that I'm keeping a secret now because it's very far from getting anything done. As you can see, this is a ship that I've been working on. And in this case, I've actually got this one mostly finished. And in this case, I've got this one mostly finished. With different steps, I've been streaming on Twitch. So first we have the low poly. Then we have the high poly, or high polygon, and then we have the textured version here. I do want to do another loop eventually on sort of like the final polish stage, but I'll do that at the very end of the process to make sure all of the assets that I make are kind of in the same world, I guess you could say that. So when it comes down to it, I have built a prototype. Yep. So I've got the ship into the game at the moment. And we've got this guy flying around your room using pass-through, and some asteroids as well, with a UFO flying around that if you shoot gets a pickup. So far it's pretty fun. Shooting things in 3D space is kind of the challenge, and I find it pretty interesting. The feel of this ship is very Asteroids-like, which I'm pretty happy with. So after a quick prototype, I've been focusing on getting the MVP, or the minimum viable product, and really focusing on that goal. I'll also be finishing on... I've also been focusing on little bits of polish, small things, but they really add to the overall experience, and that's a big thing for me as well. I think the goal now with all of the stuff that's coming out with AI is what is a polished game, and how many things can you pull together in high quality will be sort of the goal for a lot of these experiences. Unfortunately, a lot of these sort of AI and asset flips and things like that do make money, but I disagree with that. I think good game experiences are very important, so I'm learning how to take this project and make it as good as possible. Maybe in a longer period of time, but as I have the luxury of a bit of runway, I can sort of work on making that a polished asset or a polished game by the end to sort of build that experience. In this particular case, I'm not that worried about money. As a first game, getting my name out there, getting the game out there is very difficult. I don't have the biggest following yet, but we'll see how that goes. And the goal is basically make the game and learn that process. It's very much a case of previously I will make an asset or a game loop or a prototype, and then because I've learned what I wanted to in that prototype, I will stop and move on to the next thing. I'm getting very good at that first third of a game development process, but I've rarely got behind that many times before, just because I focused on learning and the tools and the technical processes involved with asset creation or programming, or just the interesting prototypes and things like that. I've been streaming twice a week on Twitch, usually at the moment Tuesdays and Thursdays. I might move that to Thursdays and Fridays, because in the research and the tutorial hells that I've been through so many times, basically early on the week is very quiet, and later on the week and weekends especially, where most people are watching on Twitch, which makes sense. That said, I don't really want to give up my weekends just yet, so I've been focusing on just Tuesday and Thursday, but I might move that soon. If you're interested in following along, the links will be in the description, as well as the schedule for the moment, and then I'll update that on Twitch and here on the next video as needed. As it stands, I've been making the ship that you've seen, and this spacesuit was where I'm currently at, making the high polygon version so far, and then I'll be making a low poly version. I'm going way too much into detail with these characters, with even the ship, because the ship is about this big in your room. and this guy would be about this big in your room. But again, I'm trying to create a quality asset that looks good. And I do find that even me, when I'm playing my own game, I'll look at the ship in detail when it's flying around me. And I have some ideas for, once again, that polish where the spacesuit or the character is actually driving the ship, because I think that would be kind of cool. Shooting asteroids, I might have like emotions coming out from that, or things like that. Once again, just that really fine detail of creating a cool game. At the moment, now that the MVP is getting closer to the end, I've still got a ways to go before that gets done. But I'm hoping to get back into YouTube a bit more. This devlog is kind of the beginning of that after the update. But I do also want to get into the Mount Empire docks again. Hoping to get more tutorials done and devlog so people can see my process and if it succeeds or not. So we'll see. As noted, I don't think this is going to get anywhere. That's fine. I'm okay with that. This is all about learning, finishing a game, and releasing a game. And unfortunately, because I don't like the marketing side of things, how to do that in, one, an ethical way, because that's important to me, but also just good, fast ways to get out there, because I don't want to do that part. But I have to. Like, it's one of those things where unless you have 10,000 wish lists, the Steam discoverability won't help you. And unless you're everywhere on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the rest of it, it's very difficult to get people to see your product. And if they can't see your product, they can't buy your product. So as much as a good game is a big part of it, the marketing and getting your good game out into the world is very important. I think streamers are a big part of that now. There is advertising as well, I guess paid things like that. But if you're like me and you have limited money, you have to figure out ways to do it cheaply or free. And there are ways to do that, but a little more difficult as well. So we'll see how that goes once I get to that. This channel will probably be the main approach at the moment. But that said, I do need to, and kind of interested in, looking at TikTok, Instagram, and all those sort of things. Once again, learning that approach to get the game out there. Even if it's just a bit of fun, I do think the best way to market things is just to enjoy that process. Again, a lot of it comes down to, especially now in the AI age, being an authentic human and trying to show your excitement for the game. So that is hopefully very contagious for that sort of thing. That said, I have to make my game as good as possible so I can look like that. At the moment, it's nearly there. I enjoy playing it. I didn't think I would, but the UFO made a huge difference in regards to just shooting the asteroids. That said, I have a lot of expansion ideas and ways to make it more interesting, so we'll see how that goes. On Twitch, I'm focusing on the ship and the spacesuit. I've done the whole process of these two things, from the low poly, the high poly, baking and texturing in Substance Painter. I'm using an earlier version, but I am very tempted to get the new one. I think I have Substance Painter 8, which is fine. But the approach to that is, once again, there's been some big jumps in regards to texturing that look really interesting, so I might look at that. It's a little expensive, but I think it's worthwhile. Substance Painter is one of the best applications for texturing, I think. Baking is pretty good too. As much as I can do that in Blender, Substance Painter does it pretty well and kind of easier as well. So I'll get that. As it stands, moving forward, I've made the spacesuits in high poly on my recent stream there. And next I'll be looking at retopology, unwrapping and texturing and all that sort of stuff as well. So feel free to jump into the Twitch when, if and when you've got the time to see that process, or of course watch all of the videos here because it's all there. Generally speaking, I'll stay away from coding and the Unity side of things because I'm not very good at coding, and it's a frustrating process for me. I'm sure it's frustrating for everybody else. If you actually had a good programmer coming onto my channel, they would be so annoyed at how I do things. That said, it works. And in my mind nowadays, working is kind of the key focus, so that's where I stand. That said, once again, not really gonna make anyone go through that. That said, in Unity, I do have experience with animation, the animator, like asset creation in Unity, little bit of shader graph. So I have all of the visual approaches to making assets in Unity. So I'll be looking at that sort of approach in the future, probably. Especially with the next project because that's very animation heavy. We'll get to that another day. I have been using anti gravity, which is Google's agentic AI thing. I guess I've been vibe coding. That said, I do have a little bit of knowledge in coding, and certainly enough to sort of get an understanding of what ChatGPT or anti gravity is doing, so I can kind of easily navigate what it's trying to do. I find they both still make mistakes, but I have enough experience with coding to sort of figure those mistakes out. Or I can tell either of them that it doesn't work and probably why, or specifically understand some of the things that are breaking, and therefore I can tell it to fix that, and it usually does. Both of those are all right. I'm using the like just chatgpt.com and the free tier on anti-gravity. I don't really believe in paying for these services on the grounds that they didn't pay for the material that they've trained all their elements on. That said, anti-gravity is pretty good. Rarely gets the task done on the first run, but on the second or third or fourth run, it will figure itself out and usually get to the point, or close enough that I can edit it and get it to the point. I do find it amusing that it blames me for some of the things it does. For some strange reason, one of the comments with 2 slashes was given 3, and then says the user added 3 comments. It's like, I haven't touched the code yet. So it's all kind of interesting. That said, the tasks I'm asking anti-gravity to do is like high-level Unity UI stuff that I don't think it was really designed for. And watching the thinking approach has taught me interesting approaches and workarounds to the things it's trying to do. Once again, with the thinking approach, I don't know if it uses more credits. I burn through the free credits pretty fast. That said, when I'm out of credits and I can't do any of the things that I want to do, which I can do by myself, I have some experience with UI, so I can do some things, but when it comes down to it, I can spend the rest of the week on 3D assets, or once again, retopology, unwrapping, animation, all that sort of stuff. I'm also trying to look at the more fundamental elements of programming so I can improve my understanding of code. So when I work with any of these other AI agents, I can understand better or write things myself, or a mix of the two. CodeMonkey, I've found, is a fantastic resource. So if you haven't subscribed to CodeMonkey, highly recommend it. He talks about programming. He's got fundamentals. He's got approaches to Steam and building that ecosystem, game development in general. He's been doing it a long time, and he has amazing tutorials in all of that category. In regards to Blender, of course, there's Blender Guru. Everyone's done the donut. But I think I had experience with Blender before the donut came along, so I didn't need to do it. VR and XR is still a very limited ecosystem in regards to power because you have the standalone headsets, and they have limited CPUs. I don't even know if they have a graphics card on them. So, and you have to render everything twice, depending on how they're hacking that sort of thing. And you also need 90 frames a second for a comfortable experience. So that's much higher than the average 30 frames a second that you'll get on a desktop. So aiming for that target is very important. That said, because I only have a ship, a UFO, and some asteroids, the poly count can be a little bit higher. So I can sort of push. That said, I enjoy optimization. I like retopology. I think it's really interesting. And fixing, what would you say, working around the limitations of optimized assets is kind of interesting to me. So I do a lot of that sort of stuff in the past and honestly still today, because I think you can get really good style even with very limited assets, and I find that fun. So I do that a lot. So in this case, I've got the game. This is basically a video or a screen video of the game in action. This is before I broke the UFO. So since then, I have pickups on the UFO and different weapons, such as a 3 array and a 5 array. Once again, just basic things to get going. So here you have the ship. As you can see, sometimes I'm just spinning a ship around to see what it feels like. Sometimes I'm shooting the asteroids. As noted, it's a little tricky to shoot, especially with a simple pellet, but if you have better weapons, you could do things much faster and easier. Occasionally you'll see a little UFO flying around. And that's basically the game. Like, this is asteroids. Pretty much complete. The only thing missing from this would be the teleport, which again is a little different in 3D space, but I have an idea of like warping to something. So here is a UFO that will always take a shot pretty much at you, so you have to keep moving, which is very important. How to make that work, how to see a UFO that is behind you, because the player can be anywhere in this room eventually, and that's the goal, or the main thing of what does a good XR experience look like, and what are the limits of what you can do with that. So I find that really fun. That said, yeah, I will be making a VR version, so imagine the background is all space, sort of probably near the asteroid belt, so you can sort of see asteroids. Of course, I will add eventually more things to shoot, so I have some ideas there. And of course, upgrading your ship to do faster ships, faster limited ammo, faster teleport or further teleport, or interesting shields and stuff like that. So there's a lot of scope in regards to adding a roguelike effect where you keep improving your ship. I do think the weapons will be pickups from the UFO, so you have to fly around and get that working. So yeah, there's a lot of approaches in regards to that. So as you can see, there's a pickup, making a shader so that can have icons, pick that up, and then you have different weapons. So imagine this now shoots in different ways. But yeah, I'd like to get like big lasers. I'd like to maybe stack weapons. I think that would be a lot of fun. So if you had a 3-way weapon, and then you have laser, you actually have 3 lasers shooting out, or 5 lasers shooting out, but maybe you will use that resource much faster because you're using that more, using that faster, I guess. So there's a lot of things I can do for this game, and a lot of that is feature creep. Once again, I'm getting this, just this, real nice in regards to that experience. And there are some issues. So for example, when you start the game, the asteroids can appear anywhere in the room, including where you spawn. So I have to figure out, like, what is my approach to that? Do I make the asteroids check if it's on the ship and then spawn somewhere else? Do I have it so the asteroids spawn and then I place the ship? There's many different approaches to these game mechanics, and I plan on figuring that out. I might need to build both systems and iterate which is best. I might choose the first one, and if it's good enough, that'll be it. And again, because it's MVP, I'm really focused on the things that I'm looking at, rather than sort of adding all of these different weapons or different updates. So for example, if I did those earlier, then that would be kind of terrible. And if I edit something and I make all of the weapons and then find that I want to do a different weapon system, I have to redo the whole system, which would take a lot of time. So making sure I have the MVP done and everything's really good, you don't have to redo whole systems because you've been focusing on the minimum viable product and making all that feel as good as possible before taking it to the next level of different upgrades and things like that. This also applies with asset creation. So, for example, making sure that you use or build your assets in non-destructible approaches, getting that as good as possible before flattening the non-destructible approaches. So if you have a bevel modifier or a subdivision modifier, you don't apply it until you pretty much know that you've got everything done. Now, of course, I've made that mistake of flattening something and then realizing I had to go back. But what I found is make sure in your asset creation Blender file have a copy of the non-destructible version of the asset. So if you need to go back, you kind of can and fix up elements fast in the same file. Figuring out your pipeline and building an approach that works for you, that is quick and efficient, and I think the key thing is efficient, is a really good skill to have. Going through the whole pipeline, once again, releasing a full game, will teach you that full pipeline. So there are things that I am learning especially in the programming side of things. So the object-oriented language where you separate everything. So if I update this one thing, it doesn't affect anything else. And I'm learning that later in the process. So if I was going to start a new project, I would put some of that earlier to make it easier to do that. Now, in the past, if I don't do that, I would finish the project because I've learned the programming that I'm looking at, and I've never learned those higher end things for efficiency. I can't stress enough, once again, because I haven't done it for most of my life. That said, I haven't needed to because I've always had a job that paid the bills. And now that I don't, I can really start exploring a lot of this. And again, hoping to help a lot of you get through that process, or even if it's just making sure you finish your project however you want to, I think is extremely important. So learning that younger means that you have that skill and that experience later, which might be useful when applying for a job in the game industry or releasing a product that you can make a lot of money from, things like that. Let's wrap it up there. This is very long. I don't know how long it's been, but hopefully some of this has been useful. You can use some of the techniques that I've used, and hopefully we can all get our projects finished and released out there in the real world. Like and subscribe if you found this useful or feel that others might find it useful. Algorithms, man, that's a whole thing. If you want to come across to Twitch, feel free to ask any questions about game dev, asset creation, life, the universe, and everything. I'm very chatty in the chat if anyone's asking any questions. So feel free to come along and ask any questions you like. Have a good day, and catch you later.